Hi, hello. Guess who's back? Back again. Probably if all the videos that you're gonna watch, this is the one that is the most important one that I'll be preparing to help you guys out with your performance tasks, specifically for the project Banyuhay and the guide for mathematics. In this video, we're gonna have a short orientation about what it's all about. I said about twice, but basically the focus is we're gonna talk about the project Banyuhay math guide for stage 1, how the research works. At the same time, we're going to talk about stage 2, how the properties of the graph works. So we're going to discuss that one by one so that all of you guys can really take note of it and have all of your questions answered. And just like other videos, if you have concerns about certain things, just go to the description and then click the specific part that you have concerns with, so that you don't have to reiterate everything in your head. At the same time, stage 3 is basically the final pata, so we're just going to talk about stage 1 and stage 2. So let's start with the orientation. Let's go. So to start with this, with Project Banyuhay, your role here is as a social worker, and your goal is to give insights, to shed light about how to take care of the body system assigned to you. And in order to do that, you're going to take note of a lot of things. So for different subjects, you have for PE, I think if I'm not mistaken, you're going to prepare a plan, and then about exercises or whatever it may be. But for math in particular, you're going to use the skills in relation to linear equations and two variables in order to shed light using actual data. That's why it's important that for stage 1, which is our research or data gathering, what you're doing here is something that is based on actual facts. That's why, again, you have to research. And what you're going to research here is a certain data that should be quantitative. Now, what do you mean by quantitative data? We have to take note of data that is numerical, or something that we can actually graph in the RCS, or the rectangular coordinate system. So, what are the examples of data that you can gather? First, you may consider thinking about diseases, like a certain disease related to a body system. And in terms of that alone, you can think of different things to research for. You may think about mortality, basically like the death rate. And speaking of rate, you may look at the rate or percentage. And then at the same time, you may even look at the total number of cases. All those things that were mentioned are different things, and it's your choice which one you would like to focus on. I would like to repeat, your data has to be quantitative, because without that, you're not going to be able to graph that on the rectangular coordinate system. That's why I would like to repeat, it has to be quantitative. And I'm giving here examples of what kind of quantitative data you should research for. Again, it should be related to your body system also. And the gathered data should only be from 2010 and onwards. The reason why we're starting with 2010 is because these data that we need you to collect is updated. Something that is still reliable as to the climate or the situation that we are in. So it is also important that said time period that you can use are as follow. Depending on the disease or whatever it is you're looking for, you may consider the use of days, weeks, months, and years. So basically, again, in speaking of quantitative data, you should take note of the time frame. Now, there are questions that I have received, and I would like to clarify as early as now. Other than the time, which is basically time period, days, weeks, months, and years, what other numerical or quantitative data can you consider to research for? Now, the good thing here is that I'm also considering age groups. Like, for example, from 15 to 20, so on and so forth. But as much as possible, you should have more than 5 points in particular if you're going with age groups. Because if you just have 2 age groups, that's difficult to actually make a prediction or make a trend line, which will be our focus later. Now, speaking of the amount of things that you need to look for, let's go to the second bullet saying that you have to make sure that you collect at least 10 points. Again, I'm giving the leeway for age group for 5 at least, but for years, months, or days or weeks, you should have at least 10 points. The reason for this is that we want our trend line to be reliable later on, based on what will happen next, based on the data that you have gathered. When I say 10 points, I want to see 10 points on the graph, so that we will be able to have a trend line and a scatter plot that will be realistic and really getting the point wherein it helps our conclusions. So of course you should have a short introduction in relation to the data that you have gathered. Now I would like to emphasize this also. What do I mean by short introduction? Because in your brochure, if I'm not mistaken, in science, you're talking about different kinds of diseases, right? There might be a case that you are having a hard time to actually like gather data related to the diseases that you've noted in science, but there's another certain disease that you managed to research for that is still related to the body system that you use for math. So of course you should introduce it a little. But if you already mentioned the said disease in the science part, you don't have to make your introduction way too much. Okay, when I say introduction, it doesn't have to be paragraphs, like 2 or 3 paragraphs. One paragraph is already long, to be honest, like maybe 2 to 3 sentences to introduce what your research is all about, so that later on, by the conclusion, that's the part where you really hit the mark. Okay, I would like to clarify that now. So lastly, in terms of the research and the data gathering part, it is important that you use in relation to it is the link, or where you received it or where you got it from, for the resources. If I'm not mistaken, speaking of resources, there are a lot of websites that you can look for, so I'll be including them in the description box below, so you could access the resources of things that you could look for. If I'm not mistaken, also the school clinic they can provide you with a certain amount of data in terms of the reports or the cases that took place in a certain time period, like if the number of people who reported with colds, diarrhea, or whatever. Yeah, you may find it in the clinic, and you may send them an email and they'll answer it. So I'll also include the email of the clinic below for your access points. Okay, but again, the important thing here is that your resources are properly noted, because if you don't, I will not consider that. Because how will I be able to verify if the research or data gathering that you've done is actually accurate or correct? That's why it's important to take note of the links and resources. Okay, now what you're seeing on your screens is basically a hypothetical data for the values of x and y that we're going to use for this example. So this hypothetical data will help us in order for us to figure out how to actually continue with the stages of this beta. So for stage 1, what you did, or what I'm asking you to do, is to research or gather data in relation to a certain issue, whatever it may be, that is related to your body system. So again, if you wish to focus on disease, you have the mortality, you have the number of cases, rate, percentage, and so on and so forth. So if you're going to focus again with those kind of things, make sure to take note of the time frame or the time period, or you may go to the age groups depending on what is available in your data. So for example here, the X values that I have is from 2010 to 2021, and my Y values is from 1 to 100. So all of these values that I'm highlighting. Now the X value stands for the time period. I want you to take note of this because this will be true for all of our research. Our X is basically our independent variable. Remember that. Now, since X is the independent variable, what specific thing is it representing? So basically this X is representing the time period per year, because again the given is year. And your Y, which is the dependent variable, So all of these numbers that I'm highlighting is basically, for example, again, in this hypothetical data, is the number of cases of a certain thing. Okay? Now, so what you need to do is to simply highlight this thing that you have noted. Again, you're only going to be able to do this if and only if it's the same thing that you have received in your research. So this is the one that you have gathered, like the time frame and then the number of something, number of cases. So go to insert and then go and insert chart. Once you do that, you're gonna see that, oh, it's a line chart, blah 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 this, blah 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 that. But you're not supposed to do a line chart. I repeat, you're not supposed to do a line chart. What you need to do is what we call as a scatter plot. So all you have to do in setup is simply go down and go to scatter plot. Click the scatter chart, and as you can notice, the points are scattered. It's in line with how many of the number of cases in terms of the y variable or the y-axis, and then on the x-axis it is in line in terms of the year that we have gathered that data. So now what you have to do next is to basically add what we call as a trend line. If I'm not mistaken, you have to go to customize, and then I just have to make sure where it is. Let's double check. I kind of forgot where it is, but basically just have to open them one by one. No, it's not in chart style. Again, you can edit it here so that when you put it in your... Okay, this is the first one that we can edit. Now, I would like to edit this first so that you can see what we're talking about. Of course, when you do your graphing, it's not supposed to be y versus x. Edit that. So go to customize, go to chart and axis titles. Name the specific chart that we have here. Let's say that this is the number of cases of colds in 8Z. Let's say that. That's the title of our text. At the same time, you can also edit your axis, your axis titles. So you may work on that also. Again, you can edit this thing out. Okay? So horizontal axis title. Instead of X, let's say that this is years. You can go with years. Then go to a vertical axis title. That's your Y variable. You can say that this is number of cases. So that's it. There's something missing pala with my chart title. Number of cases of colds in 8Z per year. It's an important note. Yeah, per year. Because we took note from 2010 to 2021. Other than that, after editing, you can change the font. It's your choice. Again, how you would like to present this. Go to series from data. Yeah, okay, we're here. So after editing, you can now go to series. And then when you go to series, there's a specific thing that you can see there. We call it as the trend line. This is the important thing that you have to do in order for you to continue with this concept or with this stage of the PETA. So for stage 1, again, you're doing research, and this is actually part of both stage 1 and stage 2. So you transfer the data that you gathered from stage 1, and then before you go to stage 2, you need to graph the trend line. Ayan. As you can see, the trend line, you can actually change the color of that. We will stick with linear because our lesson is linear. So I'm going to change this to a violet, so that's a little different. The line opacity, you can change it if you choose, like 100%, so it's going to be thicker. And the good thing if you're using Google Sheets is that the option for label is right next to it. Again, all of this can be found under series. Series. Click series. Again, you're going to see the trend line. And once you have the trend line, there's an option for a label. Again, it's important to have a label. Okay, so use equation. And now when you do that, you're going to see an equation like this. And that is actually the equation of the line that we're going to maximize for stage 2. Let me just zoom in a little so that everybody can see our equation of the line. As you can notice, the way the equation is written is not perfect. So as you can notice here, the equation is y, it's like a line and then 16.1, then asterisk x plus negative 32434. Now this is where you put in play what you have learned with our lessons. How do you write this properly? So basically, what it's trying to say is that our equation of the line is y equal to 16.1x. Is it possible to have plus minus in the linear equation? No. So what's plus times minus? The answer is negative. So this will be 16.1x minus 32434. So this will be our linear equation. So I'll just make it a bit bigger so that everybody can see it again. Ayan. So this is the equation that we're gonna use for the entirety of stage 2. And again, the beauty of this is that you didn't have to solve anything. This is the equation of our trend line. Again, what's the trend line for? In our scatter plot here, the trend line, from the name itself, is a line that we use to, again, predict the trend of a certain graph. So basically, using the trend line, we can notice something. Okay? And in that case, we have to go back to what it is that we're looking for in stage 2. So for stage 2 kasi class, we're looking for the following. Of course, we have to graph first our data in Excel, followed by identifying our dependent and independent variable. After that, we're going to identify the equation of the line, identify the x and y intercepts, the slope, and then if it's increasing or decreasing. So doing that, let's go back to our thing here. We can use the entire thing for the Google Sheets because the stage 3 is the final peta. That's where you put it in your brochure. So let's say again, in this given, our dependent variable, as I mentioned earlier, is our y variable. So what does the y variable stand for here? So that means that our dependent variable in the given graph is the number of cases. So that's it. Now in terms of the independent, so if dependent is y, independent is x. So this means that the independent variable in the given graph is the years corresponding to the number of cases. Now, the beauty of this is that you can word it in different ways as long as you mention in particular what it is we're talking about. Again, the independent variable is the one in the given graph that is corresponding to the number of cases. It is important to take note of that. So now that we have the dependent and the independent variable, we also have the equation, we can actually identify the slope. So how do we identify the slope now that our equation is written this way? This equation right here is written in slope-intercept form. So let's take note of that. So this is already in slope-intercept form. So the slope-intercept form is given as y equal to mx plus b, where m stands for our what? It stands for slope. And then we have our b, and we have our b here, where b stands for y-intercept. So in that case, since it's already in that form, we can identify that given the equation, the slope of the trend line is actually 16.1, because that's what our m is. That's the numerical coefficient of x. Do not include the x, okay? So now, to identify the x-intercept is a bit difficult, right? So we start with the y-intercept pala. So the y-intercept is automatically our b. That's negative 32434. But as much as possible, I want you again to write your y-intercept in the form of an ordered pair. So since that's your y-intercept, it can be found at negative 32434. That's it. And then in this case, our x-intercept is the only thing that you have to solve for in this task, because what you're going to do is you make your y equal to 0. In order to do that, using the same equation, y is equal to 16.1x minus 32434, you make your y equal to 0. So this will be 0 is equal to 16.1x minus 32434. I will transpose the y-intercept, or basically add to cancel it out, so that you'll have 32434 in the other side, and then you're gonna have 16.1x. So sorry. So what I did here again is you could either do transposition, or you may do the property of equality, where you will add 32434 to both sides to cancel the one on the right and put it on the left side. After that, divide both sides by the numerical coefficient of x to isolate the variable. So in here, we will divide both sides by 16.1. So, wait, I'm sorry, but I have to use a calculator. I don't have a calculator with me because my phone is being used for recording. So we will simply divide again 32434 by 16.1. So our answer is, you can put this in estimated form. So I'll just go with 2 units. So 2014.53. So let's say that x is equal to 2014.53. Excuse me. Therefore, your x-intercept can be found at 2014.53, 0. And that's it. Now we have the slope, the x and y intercept. The only thing that we have to take note here is, what can we say about the slope? The slope is positive. Positive, ayan. As simple as that. Now, the thing that I'm putting on your screen is not the thing that you're supposed to put on your brochure. This is basically the idea. Make sure that when you write it, it is incomplete sentences. I'll know it if you guys just copied my work, okay? Make sure, again, to put your sentences completely. As like the same thing that I did with the dependent and independent, okay? It's just that I'm running out of time for the slope. So again, make sure to take note. Again, other than positive, what can you say about the slope? You can already notice it here. So that's where your stage 3 will come into play. But again, I would like to clarify, for the equation part, there are a lot of dilemmas kasi there, okay? So I would like to address the first dilemma before we go to stage 3, kasi stage 2 is basically the properties. Complete na yung properties natin. We have the equation, we have the dependent, independent, we have the slope, the type of slope, the x and y intercept. So we're complete na for stage 2. Before we go to stage 3, I would like to focus on the equation first, because you're gonna see a lot of problems there depending on your given. So the first thing is that I'll write here concerns about the equation, since the equation there is not written properly. This is something, again, if you're having concerns with this, please do not hesitate to ask your teacher. The first thing to do here is, sometimes it comes off like this, 25x plus 2676, something like that. So I have received a concern about this, sir, there's no y variable. But again, because of the problems with Google Sheets and sometimes with Excel, they do not include the y variable since it's the one on the left alone. So this one right here, 25x plus 2676, is the same as y is equal to 25x plus 2676. Basically, the dilemma there is that the y wasn't included. So I have to clarify it as early as now. At the same time, there are concerns wherein the answers have the e. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen something like y is equal to 2543 e x e something like that plus blah 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 plus 23. Now, I have to actually research this in the internet, like what does the e stand for in the equation. So I'm teaching you how to Google in the equation in Google Sheets. It's gonna come out. So the E stands for, more precisely, as an Excel function, and it's a scientific notation basically. So for example, you see something like negative 3e, and it's a good one because this is for the trend line. Because in particular, you're gonna see kasi it's a scientific notation. So basically, I want it to be pointed out properly. For example, again, the negative 3e minus 04x are in superscript. I know that the variables blah blah blah. So what do you do here? Now, where's the answer? The answer was there. Oh, let's go back to that. I think answer. So if it's negative 3e, that means x times negative 3 times 0 to the power of negative 4. So that's how it works. So basically, you will put it in decimal. To put it simply, the negative 3 will still be negative, but now, as you can see, it moved by 4 decimal places. So that's how it's going to work. Okay? So just take note of that. Okay? The internet is there. Just read it properly because it's, again, the reason why it's letter E, it's an estimate, approximation. So you might see something like that. Okay? So on the internet naman, guys, please, you all have the tools there. So other than that, I guess there's no problem with the equation. You can do the same thing with this given and do the same thing all over again using a different application. Again, you may use Google Sheets or you may use Microsoft Excel. The dilemma lang naman here is that Google Sheets is online, Excel could be offline, and there are few changes or somewhat differences between how to use it in the data gathering. So I'll just open this one. I'll just put the data here. I'm showing it also so that you guys have an idea that, again, it's gonna be the same thing. Now I cannot paste it because I did it wrong. Let me just copy it again. Copy the data, paste it here. So the data is now here. So the same thing that you're going to do is you go to insert. Once you click insert, there's an option which is charts. It's already there, and then scatter plot. Okay, so now the difference here is that there's an add button. That's the one that you're going to click. It's the chart elements, and then there goes the trend line. Click the trend line and it's already there. Okay, now after doing that, wait lang, let me just double check. You can change the names here, you can edit it out, the style, the coloring, everything in between. So other than that, under the trend line, you can go further and it's linear. You can actually show the equation of this one by simply clicking the line. Click the line, format trend line. Where's that box? Oh yeah, okay. Click format trend line and then display equation on chart. So we're gonna see a different equation. It's a much simpler version. It depends kasi where they put the line and what the equation will look like. So there may be differences there, but it's acceptable naman as long as you take note of your equation properly. So you can notice, we notice different equations if you're using Google Sheets or... Oh yeah, the reason why it's different pala, kulang yung data. Yeah, I'm so sorry. 2021 100. Sorry. I'll have to double check that. What's that? 100? Sorry. The data is incomplete. 100. I'll do it again. Okay. Again, highlight. Go to insert. Go to scatter plot. That's it. Click the add button. Go to trend line. Click the trend line. Go to the settings. Oh wait. Let me just close this one. Click the trend line. Go to format trend line. Format trend line. You can see that. Now display equation on chart. And that's it. Same thing. 32434. It's just a difference between the slope. This one is more detailed. But again, as you can notice, we received the same answer even if we use two different devices. There's just a technicality with the decimals, but it's the same thing. So apologies if this is really, really long already. But again, you may use Excel or you may use Google Sheets. Either way, you're going to receive the same thing. And if you still have questions about this, just don't hesitate to leave it in the chat box or message me during class. Now again, the reason why I'm putting it this way, because for your stage 3, that is the part where you have to put it there properly. I thought this is the sample basically. You can also use months for your time frame because that's also quantitative. Then here, trend line, equation. That's it. You go to stage 2. Now for stage 3, this is where you will summarize the entire thing. And this is the most important part also. So you're going to make use of the properties in order to make a conclusion. Yes, there's a trend line and all that, but again, you will make a conclusion based on what the graph is trying to say in relation to the future. That's what the purpose of Project Banyuhay is in the first place. And then after that, based on your researches also, make use of it. What should be your suggestion or intervention for the said health issue or disease? Like, that's where you will tie it in better to the other parts of your Project Banyuhay brochure. Okay? So you have to word or answer them properly. For again, based on the given properties, you can use the x and y intercepts for the explanation. You can use the slope, all of it, or any of it, in order to somewhat have a basis for your final conclusion later on. Okay, I hope this one helps. If you're already done with stage 1, make sure to graph it now on either Excel or Google Sheets. Identify your properties, and you may answer now the final questions for stage 3. As long as you get stage 2 properly, you have nothing to worry about. And finally, that's the end of this video. I hope this video finds you well and hope that it helps you out with whatever it is that you're working with, whether it's the beta, the lessons, or whatever it may be. So good luck on that, and always believe in yourself because the great teacher believes in you. Do great. Treat every day as a day 1, whatever happens. And always remember what's up. It's respect. Peace out.